Hello and welcome. It is 5 o'clock. That means we have punched out, pulled out, and bellied up to the bar at the Old Timer Tavern. We have our drinks in hand, and we're going to get down to talking some Dungeons and Dragons. My name is Rob, aka Lantern Noir, and I am joined, as I am every week at the bar, by
Rootin' Tootin' Graybeard. Woo! No, Graybeard's Tavern.
Funny. You should open with that because I had a long conversation at 1 o'clock in the morning with a player who's in my Saturday game because he made a character that is a gunslinger.
Woohoo!
Without telling me, he's like, "Is this gonna be okay?" And I'm looking like, "Where did you get any of? Critical Role."
Yep.
Okay.
D&D Beyond.
Okay, let me talk a little bit how I handle firearms. And he's like, "I'm just gonna make a new character."
Aww.
And I felt bad because I was kind of geeked for because a rifle does like 2d10 damage.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of damage.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, it takes a combat round after you fire it to reload it, and it's a full combat round. So like you could get interrupted. I'm like, this will be really cool. Because now it's like someone's going to get tied up trying to break his concentration. That makes dynamic combat.
Yes.
And he's like, no, I don't want to be a bother.
Oh, dang. Grr.
Grr.
We had a very, very short-lived campaign over on Solution Gaming, and I had a goblin gunslinger that was like that, and the
oh no. All right, well, stay tuned, folks. We're gonna work through the oh, you're back and recovered.
Oh, woo. All right.
Okay. Phew. You had a goblin gunslinger who...
Oh, yeah. So we had a tabaxi swashbuckler and this goblin with the sniper rifle who was like always in the crow's nest, and
fun.
So, it was cool. It was very short-lived, but very, very fun.
See, I think there's a lot of potential, but I like the idea of limit because the rules that I see for the rifles are designed around a modern, take a shot, rechamber it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very different than like a muzzle loader.
Right.
Because, you can't fire and reload a muzzle loader as an action bonus action. That's just not happening. Sorry.
Yeah. I think we talked about this before.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago.
They when you start to twist it a bit and turn it into magic and some other stuff, then you're all right. Now again, to what is it? Is it 6 to 8 seconds or something that Civil War veterans could reload?
4 rounds per minute as a company.
Yeah.
So 30 men coordinate. So you always have to go by the lowest.
Right.
The slowest guy in the unit determines how fast the company can fire.
Yeah.
But the idea was there are 12 beats, and a good soldier could complete 1 beat per second.
Right.
Was considered adequate.
Right.
So that's that 12-second mark.
Right. So 2 rounds to reload, fire. 2 rounds, reload, fire.
I didn't say one round to reload because it's dramatic.
Yeah.
And you're doing double the usual damage that somebody else would be doing at range. So I think it kind of balances out. You get your 2d10 plus 2 every other round.
Yeah.
I think that's balanced.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Actually, I think that's pretty cool. And some of the rules that they have, again, currently, the damage is less.
Right.
And so, it's crossbow damage. It's just reskinned crossbow. Fine. If you're having fun with it, go for it. I have a brace of pistols. Huck those 2 and grab 2 more.
Yep. So this week we were going to sit down and we were going to talk about our favorite board games when we can't play Dungeons and Dragons, which is going to become highly relevant in the house tonight because my teen has decided they're not feeling well, and tonight was supposed to start the family D&D game.
Oh.
And we finally pinned down that we were going to play the Lost City. Good old B4, I think it is. Maybe it's B1, but it's like they reskinned the original first edition publish and I picked it up on hard copy. I'm like, okay, you know what? It's a classic dungeon crawl through an ancient pyramid with traps, and I get to use all my new 3D printed terrain because I have all the dungeon stuff now. They're
Nice.
like here, they're
Awesome.
like the Dwarven Forge, and I'm like
Yeah.
really excited. And then like I checked on them at Dance, and he's looking really bad. So they're probably going to bed early, which means the wife and the kidlet and I are going to go, okay, now what? So we'll probably play a board game.
Yeah.
So this is our time we said, how timely is it? What are the board games that we can grab when the group says we're not role playing this week, we're doing something else?
Yeah.
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to kick off?
So I'll go first because
Okay.
there's a billion of them. We used to do a board game night, like every Sunday was like board game night. This was pretty much when the girls were too young to really be playing much of anything or to anything to hold their attention for more than an hour. So they would do their thing, and then me and my grognard bros would all get together, and we'd bust out we have there is a glass cabinet in the living room that is full of board games, and
It should be.
and then there are the shelves behind me that are full of board games. And then there is another separate closet that is full of we rarely ever play these board games. So there's just a few around. But I know you're going to bring up a certain one, so I'll leave that aside for now. One of the ones we like to play is the Star Wars. Oh, I should have looked up the stupid name on it. It's a miniatures game. It's basically like it's like Descent. I think it's Legion. I think it's Star Wars Legion. Anyway, it's it's got scenarios and all this. Well, my brother got really into it. I'll look it up when you're talking.
Well,
just to make
Legion
sure.
is the miniatures based game where it's like more like Warhammer-ish.
Oh no, that's not the one.
There's Star Wars Imperial Assault.
Bam, that's the one. Imperial Assault. I totally blanked on it. I should have.
That's okay.
I should have went to my mind palace and looked at the boxes.
That's okay.
So we, when my brother was like out of work, I kept I for Christmas we went hog wild and we bought some of them for him, and because he was painting them and stuff. And then then he got really into it, and he totally exploded and made terrain and painted and made all the figs. And so we had really gorgeous games of Imperial Assault. And it used to be like it was good for when we couldn't like role play or whatever, because you could still role play and stuff because there's characters to play, generally on both sides, depending on the scenario, because I'd be like the Wookiee brawler, and someone would be the Jedi and the scoundrel, and all the characters are there. So
do you level up, like do the characters level up over time, or is it something where it varies per scenario?
If you're playing a campaign, which we were, you level up over time. So then we had little baggies that we would put all the this is my character, and equipment and stuff are random too. They come up on like cards and things. So your character, you build your character as you go, and it wouldn't your character wouldn't be the same all the time, and so it would be it would be nice, because then you could you could make some choices and be like, ooh, and the scenarios, I appreciated them because you could tell they were highly play tested, because there's almost every one of them is like a nail biting squeaker for who's gonna win this week, and total kudos to my brother, because he always played the Empire. for us, and we always got to like me and Sam the Eagle and Muddy and stuff. We always got to be the good guys. So
as one should be from time to time.
Yeah.
Cool. And that sounds like it's very similar in play to the one I'm gonna open with as my go-to for if you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons and you want to put a board game on the table, is one of the many Dungeons and Dragons adventure board games. I started with Ravenloft. My mother bought it for me. I think I mentioned it some weeks ago where she didn't want to buy me video games.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I don't have a lot of friends to hang out with right now. Things are really busy. So she bought me it because it plays from 1 to 5. And she was very excited I could play by myself. Because my mother still worries about my number of friends. Yes, I'm 46 and my mom is still worried that I have a hard time making friends. So, yeah, well, this is also the woman that turned to me at church after communion when I was 15 and said, you know what? We're going to see the dermatologist this week. Get your acne cleared up. Get you a girlfriend finally. Like, yeah, Mom.
Now is the time.
You're right, Mom. That's the thing that's holding your son who plays Dungeons and Dragons and studies for math class back with girls. It's his acne. Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
I do appreciate the declaration.
Okay.
That's it. You're 15.
We're doing it.
Now's the time.
At church. After communion. Like while we're waiting for the rest of the service to continue. My mom's got weird timing. But I like it because it's very similar, I believe. I think Imperial Assault learned a lot from the evolution of the D&D board game. There have been a lot of these. Ravenloft, I think, is the first that came out, and it's pretty much just like scenarios. The later ones, because I also own Temple of Elemental Evil, is designed to be campaigny. Do this first, and then based on how it goes, shuffle these cards into the treasure deck.
Oh,
and then
sweet.
Based on how it goes for the next scenario, shuffle these cards into the monster deck.
Right.
So it's a little more legacy card game without being, okay, this happened, tear these cards up.
Exactly.
Which I will never recommend a legacy card game ever because I find that mechanic so troubling. The idea of destroying a game's replayability, even if I know I'll never play a game more than once because I just don't have time to, I still cannot bring myself to permanently deface the game. I think that's just a weird decision made worse when they said, well, we'll sell you a refresh package so you can set your legacy game back to its original state if you want to for another $8.
Yeah, Sam the Eagle really, really, really wanted to play Pandemic Legacy, but he was like, I will only buy this if we are playing it.
Yep.
And so we were like, we're playing it. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but it got weirder and weirder and took some great turns that I never expected from it. And kudos to everyone out there for not spitting up the spoilers and stuff that would have made it like, oh yeah,
I've heard generally good things about it. I think if my principles weren't as they were, I would have played it by now. But it's just on I don't know. But the thing I like about the D&D ones is that they are set up to be, you can always go back to your default settings. You can play any scenario you want, and it's built around at least Ravenloft and Elemental Evil were built around 4th edition D&D. So you have your dailies, your encounters, and your at-will powers. Yeah. And it plays very smoothly. But you still have that I attack, I roll my D20, I add my numbers, we apply some hit points to things. It's very simplified. Most things have like 2 hit points.
Right.
So if you hit it, you half killed it because everything by default does 1 damage. Like superpowers do 2, maybe even 3 if they're meant to be used against bosses. So it's it's designed to be very quick too. Yeah. And it has a neat mechanic in it, which I really like. I don't know if it's an Imperial Assault, but if you don't, there's no like resting. If you don't explore, more stuff shows up.
Oh yeah.
So you have to keep moving. You have to keep at it all the time. which is neat. I like that mechanic in a game where there is no, well, let's just take a turn and collect our wits. It's like there's that pressure to keep the game from dragging on.
Yeah, in Imperial Assault, again, it depends on the scenario, but most of the time, the Empire player is getting points, so he can then, if you're not doing stuff, he's collecting points, and oh look, we just put a droidicar down on the board because you didn't do anything.
I got to X points. You're all screwed. What?
Yes.
Yep.
I do want to mention a game that became before these games.
Go for it.
That it broke a lot of ground, but was such a monster to play. Descent. Descent was one of the real, like, you can play D&D, but you don't have to play D&D board games. But you were playing for 10 hours. It was like no way you were playing for less than 10 hours. Basically, it's a 2-hour game plus another hour or two per player. It was so painful. So it was fun, but painfully slow.
I just looked it up on Board Game Geek. They say the playtime is 120 minutes with a weight of 3.2 out of 5.
Yeah. Is that Descent
second edition?
Is that second edition? Okay.
Yeah.
That is a fair statement. In the first edition, in the original Descent, like I said, who was a precursor to a lot of these like more Dungeons and Dragony type games, it was gorgeous, but it was painful. So Descent 2 did do a better job.
Cool. And so that's another one where you have your heroes that level up, and do they level up between scenarios, or was it always just one?
Let me think. It was more of I think you had to go back to town to level up.
Okay. So did you level up like mid-game then, or was it between
sessions?
Sessions?
You could get stuff mid-game, like new powers or whatever, if I'm remembering correctly, because it was one of those we only played maybe 3 times, and it was always, we forgot how long the game took to play. We'd play it, and then we go, oh gosh, this is such a long game.
It's 1:00 in the morning. We're still going.
Yes.
What the heck?
Yep.
Awesome. Did you want that one kind of like piggyback? So we pulled out 3 different titles of role-playing games to board games kind of in succession. Is there another one like that you want to recommend, or do you want to change it up for your next recommendation? For we're not playing D&D, we're playing this.
Right. No, I think I'm
okay.
kind of ready.
What else is on your table then? Let's just keep it going. What you got?
So, we had a lot of fun with the oh my goodness, yeah, that I was awake way too late.
Yes, for those, while he's trying to remember, for those that are not on the Twitters, somebody who is not me got asked to come to work at 3:00 this morning.
And worked until noon, and then slept for 2 hours
and took a couple hour nap. So bear, give a little bit of credit where credit can be due, and a little bit of grace where grace is needed.
So it's more of a miniatures game, but it's kind of along the same way because it's campaigny. Is Mordheim? It's a Games Workshop game, and it's miniatures based. It's a war game, but it's very adventure-y because you have a war band you build, and they gain levels, and you get equipment, and you got to keep, people get wounded or killed or taken out, and things happen. So it's got a lot of story element to it.
Okay.
So yeah, it's another one that it was one that actually I didn't play with my usual group. It was one that I played with a group in up in Grand Rapids that were originally war gamers, like old school Napoleonic, 10mm troops, thousands of minis on the board, and 8-foot by 10-foot board, and that kind of thing. But they, one of their guys got really into like Tolkien and the fantasy stuff, and so we ended up playing a lot of this Mordheim. And again, it's one of those that has leveling up, and it's set in the Warhammer fantasy world, so you can have Bretonnian knights upon chargers, and Auckland hunters with blunderbuss sniper rifles, and Skaven globadiers with gaseous grenades and like World War I type gas masks on, and they got these poison globes and trolls and everything else. So yeah, that would be one of mine to put out there. The big thing is, it's like any GW, it's miniatures heroin. So once you start, it's
you're buying a lot of minis.
Yes.
Well, now speaking of spending a lot of money, another one I would put out there that kind of piggybacks on what we've talked about with these board games, with kind of like adventure scenarios, is the Arkham Horror board game. And I came in on 2nd edition, and I went all in on 2nd edition. And when I say all in, I mean we had the box insert. We had 4 of the expansions. We actually ended up with 2 inserts. I ended up with Arkham Horror, the card game, because I had found a board insert that I really liked, but I didn't order it right away. So I kind of hemmed and hawed, and I went back and I ordered it a day later because it was like insane shipping. The insert was like $20. The shipping was $30.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, it's $50, but I'm going to get $50 of value out of it because I want to play this. And the biggest thing that kept me from playing Arkham Horror was the setup breakdown time. And then I realized I'd clicked on the wrong link, and I'd ordered the board insert that they produced for the collectible card game. And they're in England. So it was already on a ship when I realized the mistake. And they said, well, we'll do a return, but you have to pay return shipping. And I looked at it and I went, no, no. I'm keeping this. And then they came out with 3rd edition for the board game. And I was like, oh, great. All right, fine, I guess. And I hemmed and hawed, and I didn't get it for a while. And then I broke down. I'm really glad I did, because they've gotten rid of the full board. Now it's the board they use is made up of tiles that are connected with other connecting tiles, so you kind of build the board every time you play, which means every scenario runs on a different board. And there are some scenarios where you modify the board. So in one of the scenarios, the world is collapsing because the ancient one is coming through, and parts of the board disappear. And any investigators on a board, that piece that has disappeared is out.
That's
so
awesome.
It becomes this mad race against time to get back to a spot that's safe for you to do the ritual to save the universe. It's very heavy in RPG elements without being too role-play-y. I mean, you're still always making the best tactical decision. You're never going to pick a non-optimal choice, quote, because it's what my character would do.
Right.
But you still have a lot of very strong RPG inventory management, money management, health management, sanity management, monster fighting. I need to get this equipment to get these stats up because I'm the person in the party that takes on these kinds of monsters. All of those pieces are there. It comes with 5 scenarios. I think, 3 scenarios out of the box. There's another 2 I have in an expansion, and they are choose your own adventure scenarios.
Oh,
so there are moments where you go, okay, I think we're going to do this now. And this is, okay, now find card number 53. Follow the directions on the card. Or, oh, you did that thing. That means you're finding card number 52.
Yeah.
And there's, once you've done it, you know the outcome, so you can start to plan. It's because some scenarios you might fail the first time. You're like, let's do it again, but let's see if we can beat it. Or let's do it again, but let's make a different choice at this point and see if it's easier.
Right.
Which is just, I really enjoy it. The horror element is only as bad as you want it to be, but it is definitely a horror game. So if you read the cards, you can kind of go, okay, that's really creepy.
Yeah.
That's really bad.
I've only ever played first edition, and it was massive.
Yes.
It would cover my table here. Yeah, it was big, and it took a long time, like you're saying, just for setup and breakdown kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to hear that third edition added some other stuff, so maybe we'll revisit it, because we never bought it. We played it at family camp and went, it's a little too long for our table. So we went with Elder Sign, and played Elder Sign, and we loved that one, because that one's hour and 20 minutes.
Yes. Elder Sign is another phenomenal game in the Arkham Horror collection.
Yep.
That I will definitely recommend. I'm just going to use I'm just going to piggyback Arkham Horror to recommend Elder Sign.
Yeah.
That's another good. If you're not playing D&D, this is a great game. It's also a good gateway game, I think, in the sense of if you have someone that you want to get to your table as a role to do D&D, you might get them with this game, and get them thinking about, wouldn't this be cool if like you could keep this character, because it's basically Yahtzee.
Right.
If you think about it, it's Yahtzee meets role-playing game meets board games. And there's an app version that is a almost perfect recreation of the tabletop game. It takes some liberties because it's an app. I actually think it's a little bit easy.
Yeah.
I've won it once you figure out the right collection of investigators, I generally win it. At least on the scenarios I play. I don't play the hard scenarios.
Right. It's on Steam sale right now.
It is,
by the way. So that's if you wanted to pick it up. I don't know if it's an app version or if it's the board game version, but it's been on my wish list for a while. And before the sale ends here on Friday, it's on my to grab list just to so that we can.
I'm looking now. This looks like it's the phone app. It's Elder Sign Omens, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I don't show it's on sale on my screen, but it's only $6. So if it's not on sale, $6 is still, I think, totally worth it.
Like I said, I knew it was under 10 because that was my, I'm cheap.
No. I hear you. Now that you come, I might actually snag it on Steam so I can play it on stream.
Yeah.
Because it's another one of those like really fun, really light, really easy to encourage backseating on. It's a good one with chat.
And the thing is too is the characters are so easy. They're so they're so like deep and stuff that this Elder Sign is one of those that we always role play. I am the nun. I would never do that, or I'm the gangster. See, I got 2 guns, so I fight the monsters. That it's such a good role play kind of thing. But what we got
mentioning Risk as a board game that's kept interest, and that is a board game I can understand the attraction to. And if we were doing a broader talk about board games we enjoy, I have a list of games where it's like, oh, you like Risk. Have you considered? But we're trying to focus on if our D&D group is opting into a board game for the evening, what are the go-to games for that population? I'm not sure Risk or its various cousins would be high on my list for that particular population. But I can respect that it's a very popular game, and even Risk Legacy kind of blows my mind as a game that came out of like, really? You made a legacy version of Risk?
2024 or something like that too. There's a billion. Walking Dead has a Risk version.
Well, I played a game of, now we're going to talk about Risk.
I guess.
Plants versus Zombies. Risk. My son, my kid and I, my teen, and I played it at a game shop where they had the big game library available. We went up there to hang out, and because it was up by my in-laws. And we said, let's go check it out. And they had the Battletech pods and everything. And we're like, let's pick out a board game. And they went over and like, let's try this board game. I'm like, okay, let's try that board game. Whatever. Why not? There's a bunch to pick from. Let's try it. And we played it and went, we don't need to buy it. But that was interesting. So he had a lot of fun with that.
Quick aside, shop you're talking about that has the Battletech pods.
Yep.
They come every year to Marmalade Dog.
Yep.
And with your entry fee to Marmalade Dog, you can play Battletech pods all weekend.
Oh, that's a good deal.
$6 a pop or whatever for 10 minutes. It's once you got your badge and you're in. My eldest house elf, that's all she does when we go to Marmalade Dog. She just plays, gets out, gets back in line. Plays, gets out, gets back in line.
Yeah, if we get over there for that con, we're gonna have to introduce the half elf to the teen, and then we can just check to make sure they're being appropriate later. Because I think they're gonna be fine.
Oh yeah. It's really a great little con. Not to get sidetracked, but the kids all just kind of group up and they all just play together, So it's amazing.
Sounds cool. But, tactical. We'll see if we can bring some tactical aspects into the games, because a lot of the ones I would pick, I'll start racking my brain. We've already talked about a couple of games that have a tactical element, but a lot of the games I would turn to now, I think it's actually Graybeard's turn, because we've been talking Arkham Horror games, which is technically my fault. But I'll see if I can think of more games that I would bring to the table that are tactical, but they're still that we're not playing D&D, we're playing this.
Okay, so my next one, again, that I was introduced to it at family camp, and it's Dead of Winter, zombie survival, and we've played so much of Dead of Winter because there's so many great characters. It was so fun because friends of mine who know me from online played it for the first time and they pulled the character Graybeard because there's actually the character Graybeard in it, and they freaked out and Snapchat and sent me a thing, like, oh, you're in the game, and I'm like, yes I am, I'm a pirate. And that's the best part, is because my original Graybeard character was a dwarven barbarian pirate, and so very, very apropos and tons of fun. And that game it's a nail biter. It's just so good. It's just such a good game.
What's cool with it too is that it also comes in a co-op and a competitive mode, and the competitive mode has a hidden traitor element,
right?
So that you can play it strictly co-op, but then your win conditions are higher because you all are working as a team. It's easier to win in theory if you're playing competitive, because you're working down a person. One person's actively working against you. So that's it's a survival horror game, basically of base management. That's how I would describe it.
Because you have your colony, and it is worker management, but also with a risk element, because it's one thing if you have, and you get multiple characters throughout the game, or you can get multiple characters throughout the game. So then you're like, oh man, I love you, Graybeard, but we really need some canned food. Go to the grocery store, buddy. And so you send your little guys out on missions and stuff, and it really is just fantastic. And because there's gotta be like 60 plus characters. It's
a substantial deck, especially with the expansions.
There's just such a boatload of characters that you can have such interesting personalities and things going on, and then with everybody having their own win condition, because you can all have competitive win conditions that aren't against, that don't have the traitor in it. You just all have your own kind of thing that you want to succeed. So multiple people can actually win the game competitively as you win as a group. So
Yeah,
It's amazing.
It sounds a little heavy at first.
Mhm.
I have played it multiple times in small groups, and I have generally had success
Mhm.
teaching the game relatively quickly.
Mhm.
So I have that. It's also, again, on Board Game Geek, it has a Watch It Played video with Rodney
Mm.
Smith,
Yeah.
which I don't know what the time is. I want to say it's probably under 20 minutes. And anytime I
Mm.
see a game on Board Game Geek that has the Watch It Played with Rodney on it, who, by the
Yeah.
way, you can get as a card.
Oh.
There is a Rodney Smith character card for Dead of Winter. He's dressed in a Mountie uniform. I think it's like Sergeant Rodney Smith or something like that of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police,
Yeah.
because he's Canadian and really cool about it. But anytime I see that, I'm like, this is good because if you know you're gonna like, this would be a good game if I knew we weren't playing D&D on a given night. I could email everybody or send a quick text. Everyone put this on in the car on your ride over.
Right.
Listen to it because we're
Yeah.
going to play it. He's going to go through the basics of the game. You don't need to
Right.
watch. Just
Yeah.
hear it so you've heard everything one time. Then I'll teach it when we get here. We could totally play it
Yeah.
with just that much prep. And I
Yeah.
think I would still do better than everybody because I know the
Mm.
rules better, but I think we'd
Yeah.
also have a good time with it. It's a great game.
Yeah, and again with the co-op nature, it really does, because you're not, then there's no pressure to well,
Mm-hmm.
nothing I hate more than going to like a convention, playing a board game, and then asking a question and people being like, well, you're supposed to know the rules. and or sitting there watching you make dumb moves or something, and that's just so aggravating to me. I'm too much of a DM and too much of a dad. And I have buddies even before I had kids who hated playing video games with me because I would compliment. I'd be like, oh, dude, that was so awesome. That was a great combo. How'd you do that? And they would be like, shut up. It's like playing with my mom. So anyway, because I always wanted that. That Bushido blade, total samurai. I always wanted my opponent to be the best they could, because then that would make me the best I could be.
You always pick a tennis partner who's slightly better than you.
Uh-huh. Yep.
That's the only way to get better.
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Push the limits.
I hear you. I'm going to shift gears then away from from cooperative to completely competitive.
Nice.
My
All
next
right.
recommendation, if we're not playing D&D tonight, I have two games that I'm going to recommend. This is the first of the two with similar names. This is called The Dragon and Flaggon. And its primary mechanic is programmed movement. The theme is there is a brawl at the Dragon and Flaggon Inn over the Dragon Flagon. and the game is, it's played on a board. You put out, you have stand-ups, and you put out little miniature furniture to represent the bar. And then you have a hand of cards that are all of your possible moves. And you play them face down. And when your turn comes up, you reveal them. You play one face down, and then reveal the most recent card you've played, the next card you've played in your queue of actions. And so it's a very difficult game for those who really like to plan, because you're trying to plan for the board state 3 or 4 turns later, because you might have to wait 3 or 4 turns to go again. And everyone might not be where you want. So if you're a real tactical gamer, it's a lot of, okay, where do I think everyone's going to be in 3 turns, and how do I plan? Now, my daughter tends to win because she just goes, what's around me? I'm going to do things. And more often than not, somebody has wandered into her zone of influence. So she doesn't like pull the rug because someone's on the rug. She pulls the rug because she's near it and she can do it.
Right.
And 2 out of 3 times, someone has stepped on the rug on their turn and has set this up. Whereas my wife, whom I adore dearly, is like, I pushed the table. Well, there's no one on the other side of the table anymore. Okay, well, he's on the rug? Okay, I'm going to pull the rug. Yeah, but he moved before your turn came up. I'm gonna, and it's like, and so she tries really hard, but it's like, it's like that somebody in the brawl has to always be a page behind everybody else. It seems like.
That mechanic comes from Robo Rally, the game Robo Rally, and it's so funny that you say that your youngest plays it that way, because my significant other plays Robo Rally that way, because she just hates, she just hates that all the time. Whatever she's tried to do doesn't happen or doesn't work or whatever. And so she just like shuffle, lays cards down, doesn't even look at them, and then just waits till her turn, then just starts flipping cards, and it's so funny because she always wants to play the same robot. There's one little robot who is his story is he believes he's actually hundreds of feet tall, and so he's just this little robot. But anyway, so that's a beautiful mechanic put in a very cool setting. I have never played it, but I think I know the other game you're going to suggest. So
it's neat too. It's a reprint. When it came out in 2016, it was a reprint of a previous edition that had come out in like 2005. Because the original edition came with books. Oh. You had little booklets. And you would write down your moves and what turn they were on, and then you would call out what turn it is, and then you'd read off. So it was one of those where you were doing a lot of writing and revealing. And then when they reprinted it with the cards.
Right.
Which is also kind of neat. But the mechanics they're just fun. They're like, the only twist to it is it's really designed for, it says on Board Game Geek, it says best with 6 players. And the truth is, if you don't have at least 6 miniatures on the board, you often don't do anything on a given turn. Right. And it even says in the rules, if you're playing with 3 people, everyone should control at least 2 heroes. Yeah. So that you just have people bumping into each other all the time. Right. There's always a subject of your... and even at the 4 players mark, it still says if you have 4 players, everyone should have 2. Right. So there are 8 people in the tavern. It slows the game down a bit, but you get that. Yeah, you get a really heavy brawl of. Go ahead, flip the table. You'll probably hit somebody.
That's awesome. I got to put that on my list. Yeah, so.
It's also fun. I love it too because I'll also, when I play it with someone who's new, I'll say, "Here's furniture. Decorate a tavern for me. I won't tell you why."
Right.
And that way, there's no risk that I can tweak the board in any way, shape, or form to favor somebody. Okay, so what's another good? We're not playing D&D tonight. What do you think we should play?
Oh, well, I thought you had said.
You want me to go again?
Well, there was another one with this, and I have stuff to say about it, and I hope it's the one that I think you're going to.
I'll just put it up there.
Sure.
And that is the infamous Red Dragon
Inn. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we have a lot to say about this game. Mm-hmm. The backstory of Red Dragon Inn is it is a card game, predominantly, where your party of adventurers have finished the adventure, they've gone to the Red Dragon Inn, and now they're drinking. And cheers. And the goal of the game is to be the last one at the table. Either because you have not passed out from getting drunk, or because you have not run out of money to keep paying for drinks.
Exactly.
Or you just simply haven't been beat into a stupor. Because those are 3 ways you go out. You either get drunk, you get beat up, or you get all your money taken away by somebody, either through gambling or other nefarious means. Mm-hmm. And the game comes with 4 characters to pick from. And then comes all of the expansions and literally dozens of characters of different levels of complexity. We actually have one of the expansions that introduces the chef. Oh. And so in addition to playing cards, she's constantly cooking. Right. And so every so often you can go, oh, look, by the way, I finished this thing. Wham, here's a benefit I get now. Nice. Which is cool, but it's also like one more mechanic to add on. So it's a game where if I take it out and say, here, pick somebody, you almost have to say, but don't pick these ones.
Right. It's your first time.
These are
You're better off.
complicated.
Yeah. It's one of those that's great because I've only ever played the original box set. But every time I go to my local brick and mortar, it's, you know, it always seems like there's another expansion to it. That,
Yes.
You know, so the shelf is, you know, yay wide of Red Dragon in add-ons and stuff. So I could see where that's awesome that they keeping it going and keeping, you know, something new for it. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really they've put a lot. Slugfest have put a lot into it. My only complaint, and it's a small complaint with a representative from Slugfest. I approached them at Gen Con because I was pitching the idea of a game called, I don't remember what I called it. I think I called it S'mores.
No.
And it was, and here's the shtick. It's all
Right.
the mechanics of Red Dragon Inn, but instead of drinking, you look sleepy cards. And you were balancing, it was campers that were
Right.
balancing their fatigue versus their getting beat up. So you weren't making people drink, you were handing them you look sleepy cards.
Yeah.
And they weren't gambling for money, they were gambling for candy, and it wasn't gambling, it was truth or dare.
Right.
So it was I dare
Camp.
you, and then I double dare you, and I triple dare you.
Yeah.
And so it had all the mechanics were identical. The biggest difference was that it was just kind of cleaned up for the kids because I wasn't really comfortable playing a game with my then 7-year-old,
Right.
where she was making me drink until I passed out.
Right.
And I pitched it, and the comment was, well, it's a perfectly reasonable game as is for 7-year-olds. I mean,
see.
they're learning the evils of drink. You know, there's only a problem with drinking when you drink too much. And I thought, I respect your point of view. I strongly disagree, and I'm really disappointed because I really thought this would be a fun game to bring to market.
Right.
And I can't because I don't want to do the work of licensing or proving that it's different enough. Or, but that said, now that the teen is old enough that we feel more comfortable playing it with them, we've had a few games with them early in the pandemic. It was fun. It's lighthearted. You don't take it too seriously. There is definitely room for a gang up on factor.
Oh yeah.
So you have to play with a group of people that are willing to kind of spread the love,
Yes.
or with people that have thick enough skin that when they finally get that, like we all know Sam the Eagle's going to win this one, and everyone starts feeding him drinks and targeting him with damage cards that he's not going to take it too personal. It's like, you do have the most money at the table right now, dude.
Yeah.
You're kind of wearing a bullseye.
Right. Yeah. It's funny too when you have a regular group. It really is the inner group kind of.
Yes.
Like I said, Muddy usually plays to play and role play it and have fun. I usually do the same kind of thing, where I kind of. It's not that I don't try to win, but I definitely yuck it up more than anyone else. And then Dr. Gear and Sam, they played the game, you know, and it's really funny when so one time we played the Game of Thrones game. There's like 3 of them out there that are board games, but this was the like tactical take the kingdom, you know, Game of Thrones kind of thing. And and we were playing with our buddy Doug, and Doug's like to Muddy, if you don't do X, he's, you know, Graybeard's gonna win this turn. And Muddy goes, but I think he'll be a benevolent king. And Doug was just wanted to flip the board, you know. You could just see him like, you role-playing idiots. This is a board game.
Well, and that's the Game of Thrones, the board game, because I have it as well, and it's one of my favorite games because it takes the elements of a good area control game and adds a lot of role play because it's very difficult to win, if not impossible, without forging alliances and then knowing the magical moment to break them.
Yes.
But because it has the rule of if nobody wins outright, it's the most castles wins. It's very easy to turn into a kingmaker game.
Yeah.
Where I might not think I can win, but I can make the winner.
Right.
So I'm going to pick so and so. I'm going to pick Greybeard to be the winner.
Right.
And even though I will technically lose,
Yeah.
I get to feel good that I was on the winning team. Or I know the only reason you won was because of me.
Right.
Which makes it a tough game with a lot of groups.
Right.
Because it has that, like, I don't think I've ever played a game of it, honestly, outside of a 3-player game, where it didn't come down to an element of Kingmaker.
Right.
I can't think of any that I've played it where it really did work out as a clear so-and-so has won the game, and we all work, because if everyone works to stop somebody, they usually can't win.
Right. Right. And so it's really funny the couple times we played it, with different people other than like the core. Those other people have always so the very first time we played it, some of us had never seen or read Game of Thrones. And so we didn't get the gist of it. And so they were like, well, you're House Lannister and you're supposed to be this. And you're just like, and they were trying to impart all that to us. And like I said, some of the times where we played with other people, just excruciating for them because they were the types who are like, you have to X this turn. And you'd be like, man, I don't want to do that right now. I said there's an alliance, so I'm not gonna attack him. They're like, you just gave him the game. This is garbage. Anyway,
welcome aboard, LB. Thank you for bringing everybody over. You are an amazing individual, and we are happy to have you chilling out with us today. Indeed, we had a raid. So thank you for that. If you're hanging out with us for the podcast recording, and you do not know who LB Hack'emUp is, you have to check them out. They are an amazing content creator, and role player, and dungeon master, and a dozen other things on top of that. That I can't say enough nice things about them, to be really honest. We've known each other for many moons. And again, they're a great player. So definitely check them out if you haven't. If you're listening on the podcast, it's twitch.tv/LB Hack'emUp. And check the show notes for details to find them, because you absolutely should. They are good peeps. We are talking about the theme for this week, for those just joining us, is we're not playing D&D tonight. So what game should we play? And we're talking about our favorite board games to put on the table when you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons. Right now we're in the middle of talking about Game of Thrones, the board game. And what I want to add to that is if you do get Game of Thrones 2nd edition, the board game, what I found is really slick. A company called Tower Rex, you can find them on Etsy, makes a board insert for it. And it is phenomenal for organization. And it does what I think a good insert does, which is you open the box, you take everything out of the box, and you start playing. And then you put everything back into the inserts. You put the inserts back in the box, and you're done. Right. So it's all organized by house. So if you want to be Lannister, I literally hand you the Lannister box.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it has all the tokens in it, all the cards in it, everything you need to play House Lannister. Nice. It is a gorgeous addition to any Tower Rex just makes generally very beautiful board inserts. Yeah. But for Game of Thrones, the board game, I consider that insert almost a required purchase because it is so many bits to put on the table. There's just so much stuff to take out and put down that I don't know how often I would put it on the table if I had to do everything in baggies.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because there is that moment in all board games where you say, "We're gonna play this tonight." And everyone goes, "Yeah, okay, cool. What's else? Oh, you're gonna love it. It's awesome." And then you start taking things out of baggies.
Mm-hmm.
And after about 20 minutes of this, people start talking about how their babysitter is texting them
Mm-hmm.
because one of the kids is throwing up, and then
Right.
somebody else gets a text that they have a flat tire that they have to go change.
Right.
And yeah, um,
Yeah.
there was an article that the headline was, "Gamer reassures dinner guests that game will be fun once they finish reading the rules."
Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. That is a complaint, a very horrible thing about board games. And like I said, the thing that I'm loving about this day and age is if there is not a video on how to play a game, usually from the company, I generally don't buy it. Because
Yeah.
I will stand in the brick and mortar, an old fanfare there at the game wall with my phone, and I will look up whether it has a good video for how to play before I start even thinking of buying it.
Now, do you have any experience with Hero Quest?
I'm looking at it right now.
Oh,
It's right there.
okay. What do you think of it as a board game to put on the table? Shadzar just brought it up as a game that they would recommend if
It
you're not
is.
playing D&D.
It is one of those. When it came out, it was one of those games that was like, yeah, we're not playing D&D tonight, so because Chad had a flat tire and his girlfriend's throwing up or whatever we were just talking about, the reasons you wouldn't show up or whatever to the game, and we're like, oh, we can't go to the next, we don't want to play the next bit without all the players at the table, that kind of thing. Hero Quest is an amazing substitute for D&D, or at least it used to be. I haven't played it other than on a phone app in a very long time. But it's really great because the huge amount of characters again that you can play, and they used to come and they were like, because it's GW was like $30 for a character, and they'd come in their own box, and you'd have to put them together and paint them and everything, but they came with a little card, and they came with their backstory and all this stuff that made it very cool to have it be your character.
I would say,
no.
If this is a game you think you want to get in on, you might bear in mind that the for the other games that we've referenced, because of its age, and again, they're talking about there is going to be a new edition coming out someday. The current Amazon price is $300. So it's definitely a hard to find game. Hopefully they do that reprint that Chedzar mentioned, which would be kind of cool to see if that comes back or not. So that's one to mention. There's a few other board games much like it in that vein of a quick little the fill in. Is there one more you want to, like an honorable mention, you just want to get the title of?
Talisman is another one with a lot of characters, and it's another Games Workshop type game, so it's got that element of goof and over the top fantasy and stuff, and the plethora of characters that could come with it was always a good time. That also was an expansion hog where you could have Space Marines running around and with flamers and storm bolters and stuff. So it was big. So
cool. My honorable mention tonight is going to be Dungeon Roll, which I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a tiny little game. It comes in a little. Oh wait, no, it's not Dungeon Roll. I'll have to look it up. Dungeon Roll is also a cute little one. But
Dungeon Roll is a really good. Let's play something fast.
Yes. There's another one I can't think of the title off the top of my head right now, which I will mention at some point on Twitter probably, because it'll come to me when I go over and fish it out.
Like Dungeon Deck, Dungeon Roll, and then there's another one made by the Dungeon Roll guys that's just a little more something to it.
No, it was something. It was like Little Dungeon or something, but it was one of those you collect your cards and you have to play the cards to beat the monster. It wasn't like 5 Minute Dungeon. But even dungeon rolls, another quick, easy. It gets the honorable mention as we move into the last parts of today's show.
Right.
So there's our recommendations. If you're not playing D&D, here's a bunch of board games that might do the fit. If you have more ideas that you'd like to suggest, we can talk about them next time on at Happy Hour. We can bring it up. You can send your emails with suggestions to oldtimertavern@gmail.com, or you can hit either myself at Lantern Noir or at Graybeard Tavern, no S, with other ideas. Do you have a quick thought, sweetie? Because we're in the middle of the show.
Sorry, do you want a berry smoothie?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I'm good still. Apparently I have waitstaff in the house that's pushing the berry smoothie special today, and I'm still working my way down my finish in a maple syrup cask whiskey from Ironfish Distillery. But yeah, we should probably get into our email bag.
All right.
We got an email from Nerdrock, spelled GNERDROKK.
Nice.
Yes.
Rock.
With a couple of questions about Dungeons and Dragons. As the years go, they've kicked us 2 questions to Muse today for our mailbag segment. Question 1: what are some aspects from other TTRPGs that you think could be implemented into Dungeons and Dragons? Are there any particular rules or styles that you think could work for D&D in its current state?
I often talk about the BIFs, your beliefs and ideals and flaws. That a lot of that comes from the Burning Wheel kind of games, and so I think that those should be implemented harder, put in it should be more than inspiration, or inspiration really needs to up its game in the game. I think that inspiration should be like almost like luck points.
Okay.
Just re-roll or roll another 20 even after you've rolled it. Just to make that bigger and more momentous. I would say I would because in Burning Wheel those are huge. In some of the Powered by the Apocalypse games, those same things, the biffs are called hooks, and you get an experience point for role playing one of your hooks. And so you only need 5 experience points to go up a level. So if you can hit 1 or 2 of your hooks in a game session, you've almost got another level. So it really pushes the role play and that stuff about your character. Nice. That would be mine.
I was starting to think about nature and demeanor from the World of Darkness as an interesting thing to replace alignments.
Yeah.
Which I think would be good. But I also think, building on that, I would like to see something like what 7th Sea does, where you have your flaws and you are actively encouraged to sabotage the game by your flaws. Now, I say that with the idea that it's not so much like ruin the game, but to make the game more challenging and thus more interesting. Yeah. Because I don't know if I would want... I understand there are a lot of groups that wouldn't take to it well.
Right.
I can't believe Graybeard's kicking in his flaw now. He's screwing... we're so close to finishing. Why has he got to ruin it by getting distracted by the cute girl? But at the same time, I'd like to see it in the rule book, because I know that things like that aren't going to be widely talked about if they're not in Dungeons and Dragons. It is it's better than, but it's like Warcraft is the big MMO. D&D is the big tabletop RPG. So if they can work in things like that, so that it's easier for players to go, hey, winning isn't everything in an RPG. Sometimes it's really good to have some failures because it makes the story interesting. Right. And in a lot of ways, I think that goes back to the idea of maybe doing the nature and demeanor, where there's a mechanical advantage to making particular character choices that aren't limited to the alignment matrix.
Right.
They're tied to personality archetypes. So doing things that are inherently secretive, and possibly slightly to the detriment of the game, is encouraged, because at least everyone, you're going to get a bonus that you can use later to help the
Yeah.
party. So
Right.
there's that. It becomes more of a cooperative storytelling game. And I think both of us would both agree anything we could do to keep improving inclusion
Right.
should
Yep.
definitely be part of the game, because that's something that's been one of the best parts of D&D over the last couple of years, is their work to keep making the game accessible so that everyone can sit down and see a part of themselves reflected in the game world as they are, and
Yeah.
then they can decide to what extent they want to be different in this fantasy. If they want to be, if they're for example someone who uses a wheelchair in real life and they want to have that as part of their game, that's a choice they can make, and the rules support it. And the only thing they have to have different is they can throw fireballs. And that's totally cool and totally an option. So they can decide on their own to what extent they're using a fantasy RPG to get out of the real world and what extent they're not. To what extent they want to be themselves. That's all up to them. And I think the more we do that, the better off we are.
Yeah. Definitely.
Cool. Question 2.
All right.
Do you have any, I'm going to read their whole question. Do you have any
Okay.
tips for playing online games? I'm looking at joining an online game in the near future and was wondering if you had any general tips. I'm a relatively shy person. I don't know. Sending us an email to a podcast for us to discuss in the open is not exactly a shy move, but we'll trust you on that. And the thought of playing with people who would be initially strangers is a scary one for me, but I'm willing to give it a go. What do you think?
I would say, and this is okay. This is the advice I give to people who are seeking a therapist. If you don't mesh, that's okay. That's fine. If you are, particularly when you're new, you might want to play in one shots or short shots that are just, 5 or 6. That way, if you're like, oh no, Dave over there, he's way too intense for me. I can't cope or deal, or he's just not someone I can play with. That way you're not committed to a long thing, or you're not 3 sessions in and you go, I'm out, I'm done, and there's a 12 arc campaign that now has to find someone to fill a seat or something. And even if you do get in that situation, don't stay in a hostile situation or a situation you're not comfortable in. Apologize and walk away and try again. Don't give up. Don't give up. There will be a group out there that you will click with, and you're gonna be amazed, and you will love it. You'll love it.
I will say honestly, on the subject of loving it, I appreciate the pandemic is wrapping up. We are, I'm guessing, 6 to 9 months away from 100% normalcy. I think is my gut. I am not that anxious to dive back into in-person gaming. Now, part of me is like, well, so my bread and butter is online gaming, having taken over streaming it. But even if I wasn't streaming it, there's so many things about online that I prefer, not the least of which is the commute. Like, it is so nice to not have to clean the house to pack people in. I don't have to go to someone's house and then wonder, how much did I put them out by coming over? There are no food allergies to worry about.
Right.
It's kind of nice on that front. Yeah. So I would definitely think the pandemic has caused the surge in virtual gaming. And so lean into that a bit. Don't be afraid to check out groups, because unlike 2 years ago, it's very normal to play on Zoom using Roll20 or VTT or Tailspire, or in case of my games, Jamboard. Because we can just sketch out the map for everybody and then we can follow along, and it works just fine. So don't definitely and the neat thing is you're not working so hard because you can probably find people on your schedule,
right?
And you don't have to worry about finding people in your location,
right,
on your schedule. So definitely take advantage of that. I want to echo what Graybeard said. Don't stay in a situation that makes you uncomfortable. If you're getting a bad vibe from someone, if, for example, they seem to be taking a lot of what you say out of context and thinking that that's somehow proving their point, and you're just getting frustrated when you say, hey, please stop that, and they just keep doing it because they can, don't come back.
Right.
It's better, I think, for the universe if you can say, I'm not coming back because, but you don't have to. You can just say, I just don't want to come back. Nothing, I don't want to go into the whys. I'm just choosing not to come back. I hope you all have a great game.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
that all plays into like session 0 X cards and all that safety tools that are out there for gaming too. So that definitely there's a group out there for you. Trust me on that one.
I also think that builds on the ways to know you have a good group is at session 0. If a group says we're going to start playing on Monday and everyone should show up with a 3rd level character, and this is going to be a 16-week campaign, I would be nervous if the plan is to start the adventure on Monday. Now, if there's a one-shot, Monday, be here at 7 o'clock, we're going to play a game, bring your own 3rd level character, I wouldn't be so worried because you probably won't have the attachments and the depth of character that's going to create that awkward situation where, like, is he really doing that to her in the back room? Is our rogue actually... We misunderstood him, right? That doesn't usually happen in a one-shot. But session 0 is where you find out that this is on the table or off the table. And that's a sign of someone who's probably going to care about you as a player and wanting to make sure you're having a good time with the game. So definitely be looking for that. Other tips. I think the last. Go ahead.
What was the first question again? I wanted to make sure that there wasn't like a second part of the first question that we
things that we should add to D&D.
Oh, okay. We can do a whole show on that.
We could totally do a whole show on that.
Let's get back on that. I will say once I started playing online, I don't even with my social group of guys I've been playing with for 30 years, I don't think we'll go back to everybody coming over on a Saturday night. We might only do that like once a month.
Yeah.
Where the other 3 weeks out of the month on Saturday night, we'll just telecommute and play, because it's so much. I went from being frustrated and playing like once a month to playing like 6 or 7 games a week,
It is a lot easier when you can just, like, I can tell my wife I have a game at 6 o'clock. I'm going downstairs at 5:30 to get ready, as opposed to I'm leaving the house at 4:30 to be sure I get to the game store with enough time in case traffic is bad to get set up. Even as the dungeon master for the online games, my setup time is still relatively short compared to what it would be like in person if I was going to bring all the maps. And the other tip I would give during the game itself while you're playing is to remember that on a Zoom call, especially if they have a large group, I cap my games at 4 players. That's my ideal number, because I feel like anything past that, it becomes hard to talk with each other. And it is a real challenge, I think, in any virtual group of more than 5 to take turns well.
Right.
Because you have to remember that on a Zoom call, there is a fraction of a second difference between the perception that it's your turn to participate and the fact that you've initiated your turn. And I don't mean like your combat round, but I mean your turn to talk. And what often happens is 2 people will talk over each other very quickly because they've both picked up from a third person. They're done. It's potentially my turn. And they'll both jump in. Yeah. And sometimes they'll both stop at the same time. And sometimes they'll assume, because in social conversation, if 2 people start talking at the same time, one person generally stops to let the other person keep going, and they kind of file their thought away to bring up in a moment. If both people assume that's going to be the other person because there's no good visual cue, you get these really weird moments. So kind of like my tip is file that in your brain to be thinking about the challenges of that half-second delay. And if you feel like you're not getting a chance to talk, to say something, to raise your hand, literally raise your hand in the Zoom call to get people's visual attention and say, hey, another person, I feel like I haven't had a chance to talk yet. Here's what I would like to add, and bring it up to your DM.
A very good statement that I have a tendency to use all the time is the while they were doing that,
yes,
and because it really, you are then inputting to the story. Your character has agency, and it's never a bad thing to do this too. LB will remember when we first started playing and stuff, some of the groups we were in and things, I would I would go, hey, I think LB had something she was gonna get at. So if you see someone like want to say something and then they kind of get bulldozed, like Lantern's saying, it's not a bad thing to call them out or say something. And if you have a good DM, they'll be watching for those bits and bobs and try to get back to you.
Yes.
I also would say the 4 players and a DM is the absolute best slot for stage time, first time in the spotlight and everything. Once you add that 5th player, it really, in a 3-hour session, it really gets, there's a lot of time where you're off stage, where it really can be complicated. The 4 players and a DM seems to be industry standard.
It definitely is one that's I have found very comfortable. I used to run a game with 6 people at 6 players at the table, and I felt like I was okay at a physical table. I think virtually it's a lot harder, but I also think virtually I see more when my players are are just background until they want to jump in. It's more noticeable when you have the one quiet player online, and maybe that's cool. Maybe you're like, hey, I'm fine being the dude. I want to be the rogue. I'm only going to talk when something really interesting happens. Otherwise, I'm just along for the ride. That's fine, but just kind of play to it. So there's that. I think we might flag because we've talked about games that are not D&D. I love the first question you brought to us, Nerd Rock, about aspects of other TTRPGs that we could add to D&D. We might actually use that next week as the topic of the week, because there's so much there we could bring in, a lot of mechanics from other games that we really love that we could think about how to work into D&D mechanics. So maybe they'll make their way into D&D 6th edition, because we know that WotC, someone there downloads this podcast.
Of course. Duh.
No, we don't, but we hope. We hope. So what have you got going this week? What are your accomplishments?
Take 2.
Hang on, let me have a drink.
Yeah, it always helps.
What are your accomplishments from week past and your favorite upcoming thoughts for the week coming?
So we are over on Indoor Adventures. We are in like a couple week hiatus because we're between games. We wrapped up our Masks game, and we're moving into City of Mist. We're going to take our Monster Noir, which we've been playing once a month, and we're going to make it a weekly for like 10 sessions. And it's a new game that I'm the only one, I think, who's touched it or played it. I'll be running it. It'll be in our Monster Noir world with some of the Monster Noir characters we've used over the past couple of years. So that'll be coming up in 2 weeks. So I don't have that now. But the other thing that I have going on that's streaming is my Sunday morning show. We've been playing Wilder Myth.
Yes, I checked some of that out.
That game, I adore that game. It's so good. It's got this beautiful art style and this simplistic stuff going on. It's got cards and different characters and stats and choices and amazing story. And it's all like generated by itself, and procedurally generated is the term I'm looking for. Great game. That's Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I get to play with a lot more toys and things when we play that. and so I even got everybody's weapons now, including the wizard's staff and the warrior's mace.
Yes.
So it's a cute little game, and that's what we're doing on Sundays. And then I'm back here on Tuesday for some more podcasty goodness.
Sweet. Well, this weekend being the 4th of July weekend, or Independence Day in America, I actually I pitched it. I conceived it at the beginning of Happy Hour last week. I pitched it during Happy Hour last week. We ran it on Saturday. I had the Raven Armed, who is an amazing content creator. He just made Twitch partner, was one of the players. And he, shockingly, he had his mods visiting for the weekend. They had a house party for the weekend. They took time out to play, which was really fun. And it was more of a role-playing history experience than I would call a role-playing game. But I thought it was fun. All the players thought it was a good time. They did indeed save the Union. And by being in it, by ensuring that Chamberlain ordered the bayonet charge on the second day of the battle.
Excellent.
He was the ultimate target, which was kind of fun. It was kind of a neat Easter egg. I had a great time running it. And then this coming week, we're going to be back. Candlekeep's going to continue. They're working their way through Shemshime's bedtime rhyme. And they're having it was fun last week because the whole point of it is that there's this bedtime rhyme that is itself a virus. When you start singing it, everyone around you starts singing it. And I didn't mean to do this, but as they were being escorted into this area they were going to be staying in Candlekeep, I mentioned that the head sage was humming under her breath. And sure enough, one of the players goes, I'm going to grab myself a book to read. I'm just going to pick this one. I'll follow along. And she just instinctively starts humming along without me having to say anything. And so they're having a blast with that. Curse of Strahd will be back on Sunday. Saturday night, I'm running the first of 2 back-to-back one-shot adventures with a couple of groups of people that wanted to play D&D. And rather than like trying to make our schedules work into a regular let's meet every Saturday thing, we're just doing we're going to meet for a one-off here and a one-off there. And I think in a couple more weeks, we'll do another set of one-offs. And I'm excited for it. I still actually am trying to fill one seat at the table. I've got one spot to fill, and I'm looking at both weeks and trying to spread the people who said they're interested around. And casting's hard, but it's fun. And I'm finally going back to my wells. I'm not writing new content. I'm rerunning some adventures I've run previously with different people. So I'm hoping that turns out really well and saves me a couple of gray hairs.
Right.
Because it's been a hoop. But I'm really excited for it. It should be a great cast. And so that should be a very fun. And then tonight was supposed to be the first night of family D&D. So we'll see what happens. We'll check on the teen here. They were looking a little bit green after dance. So we'll see if we're still playing or not, or if they crash and I have to use one of these many. I was going to say. We have board games. If we can't play Dungeons and Dragons tonight, dang it, we're going to clean off the dining room table and we're going to put a board game on it. Period. Dad's had it. Literally.
Even if we need a flamethrower, or if my kitchen table anyway, it'd be like a flamethrower or a bulldozer to clean off, because it's like laptops. It's everything.
Yeah. There's going to be about half an hour of clean off the dining room table before we can use it. But here's the other win: we'll have a clean dining room table when we're finished. See, Dad's not an idiot. So, any parting thoughts as we wind down our podcast edition?
Not a parting thought, but a honorable mention, because you brought up the single player mode. There is this old game, and I shouldn't bring it up because it's like $100 to buy, but it was one of the very first single player board games I'd ever played. It was called Patton's Best.
Ooh.
And you were a tank commander, and you could role play the whole campaign of, like, through Normandy or Market Garden or whatever. It's an ancient game by Avalon's Hills, but I've been meaning to mention it every time we bring up single player board games. It was a really, really fun game.
Awesome.
So that's my honorable mention. And mailbag, person, definitely get out there, put yourself out there and play some games.
Amen to that. We welcome more email and feedback to oldtimertavern@gmail.com, or you can hit us on the Twitters, Lantern Noir and Graybeard Tavern. Thank you for downloading this podcast. Please consider leaving us a review, and it doesn't matter what the review is. Every review helps expose the podcast to more people and helps get the word out, helps people find this content. We appreciate just you being part of our show by being part of our family. Until the next time we chat, we'll see you next week, and stay safe. Now, for everyone who's hanging out here on Twitch, because I always draw that out just long enough that I can find it really, really easily when I go to do the editing for the podcast itself. Although she's never... let's see, where should we go? We should figure out who we're going to raid. We appreciate having you along. Thank you again, LB, for the raid. It was great to have you popping in on us and bringing your audience here. We appreciate that. We love your support over here at the Old Timer Tavern. And to hear that you've got plans this weekend because it would have been fun to game with you. But we'll be okay. Where should we send everybody? I'm thinking Nightlight's streaming right now, and she's a phenomenal content creator. If we can maybe head over there. I don't see anyone I follow that's currently playing any D&D at the moment. Actually, no. Let's go hit Nebula.
All right.
Because she's actually in my Sunday night game. So we'll go show her some love. She plays with me on Sunday night. She plays Samara, our evocation wizard. She was clutch. Last time we played, we were doing part of Curse of Strahd. They were facing over 24 vine monsters, plus assorted other monsters and evil druids. And granted, the vineyard's not long for this world because multiple fireballs went off.
Right.
But at the same time, she was clutch. Those fireballs did a lot of net damage. And I don't know how to break it to them that, okay, yes, your wizard's have all of her spells. Yeah, you're not done today yet.
Right.
You still have to deal with the blight. You have to go deal with the source of it. You're going to take a long rest. So are they. It's going to be harder if they take the long rest. So we're going to go check her out. Say, hey, welcome. She's streaming right now, and it should be a fun time. Until the next time we hang out, please, stay safe.
Gear up for the raid.
Remember to play games, and let's see you next time.